back with this charming, handsome gentleman with a fresh haircut on the other side, Mr. Fast Eddie Fear. How are you doing, Eddie?
I didn't think you noticed. I try to look good for you.
That's how you keep the spice in our relationship, is by keeping your mane nice and cut. I'm growing mine out so you can run your hands through it, through the internet. If you can.
I would grow my hair long. I'd like having some sort of significant hair. And my wife can't stand it. So unfortunately, she gets to make that call. So my hair is shorn pretty frequently. I was lucky to avoid it a couple times. I don't know about lucky, but I was in the hospital a couple times and didn't get it cut when it was scheduled to get cut. But eventually got a little bit healthier and they managed to buzz me up.
Yeah, I honestly probably need that too, because as a bachelor who just goes on dates, like I'll get a haircut sometimes, but mostly I'm like, yeah, it's fine. I'll keep writing it out. And I feel like that checks and balances is probably important to have in life. A lot of games to talk through. So before we do that, I'm excited to see Eddie again. I'm excited to see all of you guys here on Live Before Lock. I'm also excited to see our presenting sponsor, Thrive Fantasy, because you know what? Over the break, I didn't get enough time with the new DFS app where players draft a lineup built of prop bets of only top-tier athletes. But now I do, and that's what my blessing is for this day. You pick 10 props out of the 20, and the less probable a prop is to occur, the more points it's worth, and that's where the game theory lies. So click this little link we're dropping in the YouTube chat right now. It's bit.ly/Awesemo. And that'll take you right to the Thrive Fantasy app. You can get your deposit bonuses, get $10 on any $10 deposit, $20 on a $100 deposit, and $50 on $200 or more. And that's all fast release. You get it right away. So go support our sponsors. Go check out Thrive now. Click that link. Eddie, let's talk a Thrive guy up front. I'm sure you've missed this hot prop bet action. And this is a guy in the news, so I feel like it's worth just hitting up front. Anthony Davis. His over-under on points is 22.5. The over gets you 95. The under will get you 105. This may shock you, Eddie. I'm going to take the under here. How about you?
22.5 real points? Yes, I'll take the under.
Yeah, I imagine that prop was made before the minutes restriction thing came out.
Maybe. It's not grotesquely off, but he does not score, an average of fantasy point a minute. He scores about, 3/4 of fantasy point a minute, and the matchup is pretty damn dreadful. So, yes, I would come in well under that. I think I have him projected for 15.5 real points or something.
Yeah, I've got him at 17.4 and whatever his run of minutes is. But yeah, there you go. So check that out. That should be an easy win.
Oh, but pour one out for my boy. Karl Anthony Towns is out, which also changes the whole slate.
Oh, boy.
He's concussed. He is concussed. He took one to the dome.
A car accident.
Yeah, he's got a concussion.
Yikes.
That's a shame.
This is his first game he's ever missed?
Yes, it is. This is the first game of his game he has ever... This is the first game of his career he's ever missed. He has played in 300 and some odd games consecutively. 3 times 82 would be 246 plus whatever 58 or so we got this year. So he was in game 315 or so, I would think. First time out. That sucks, but wow, is this slate got some really sexy value now. This is everywhere. Power forward on FanDuel is hilarious because there's literally 29 elite plays.
Yeah, there's a lot of cheap guys on DraftKings as well. We'll talk through them at all. I guess while we got you now, let's talk about Towns. Gorgie Deng is out. He's got a personal absence today. The Wolves are versus the Knicks, who should be a pretty fertile ground inside. What are we doing now that Towns is out? Who's going to benefit?
Yeah, I imagine you will see, though we can't necessarily guarantee this, but I imagine you will see Sarge start next to Taj at the 5. It's a matchup where you can certainly get away with that without any significant concern that it's going to completely wreck you. Wow, that's really interesting news. I really thought he was going to play. Sorry, I'm personally upset. Like he's my guy. Born not far. It was a homecoming game for him too. He was born on the same date as me, not that far from me. We're both Jersey boys.
I forgot he's a Jersey guy.
Sorry? Yeah,
I forgot he's a Jersey guy. I didn't. As a New Yorker, we're usually pretty proud of our locals, but Jersey and New York not really the same. So I have no.
Yeah. Give me just 1 second. I want to rerun a quick rotation here and then make a more accurate prediction as to what exactly I think is going to happen here. But I do think you get Taj starting at the 5 next to Saric. You'll get some additional Deng time, or not Deng, Deng time rather. I'm getting my Dengs in my
No Deng. He is not. Deng or Jang?
Deng is available.
Yes, Deng is available. Jang is not.
No I. D-E-N-G, okay. Not D-I-E.
Right now, yeah, same page. We're good.
Yeah. I'm almost there. Just 1 second.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, obviously, just to fill the air while you take care of your stuff, a lot of usage going to be left behind with Karl Anthony Towns out.
Yes.
At least on NBA Wowie, looks like everybody who touches the ball will benefit quite a bit here.
Yep.
Not to mention the minutes for the bigs, but
Yeah. So okay. So the sum and effects here are. You can like Luke Cornett a little more because it's going to help with his rebounding the time he gets there. You can like DeAndre Jordan a little bit more. You can like Mitch Robinson a little bit more looking across the ball. Those are all reasonable things to look at. And prioritize a little heavier the Knicks starters in the event that game should play a little bit closer now. And they've already released that lineup. But yeah, a lot of usage is going to get made available here. Wiggins, the first name that's going to come to mind there, and then Teague, I think. Wiggins' ownership is going to be well lower. People were already trying to play Teague. Finding a way to get Andrew Wiggins into your lineup strikes me as a pretty strong tournament play there. But they're minus the only two real centers on the roster. I want to say Tolliver is interesting. Give me a second and let me really toy around with this lineup. I want to get this right. So,
sure. While Eddie's doing that real fast, just a quick plug. Use that promo code Live Before Lock. Going to have a lot of updates here to Osmo's rankings as well as the ownership projections, which come with a premium membership. So 50% off right now with the promo code Live Before Lock. Get in there now because this is one slate where you actually can make some money by pivoting to things based upon these various changes that are going about right now.
Yeah, so you will get Deng and Tolliver entering the rotation and playing some reasonably significant minutes here. Deng obviously had been in for a bit with the other guys out, but was on his way back out and now pulled back in. So Wiggins is the immediate pivot. I think, I'd put his projected shots now somewhere around 23 and 23 shots against the Knicks is pretty exciting. Teague makes a ton of sense too. He'll call his own number more. This is already a team that gives up a goodly number of assists, so it's pretty hard to not see Jeff Teague getting to some sort of point assist double here, and especially at DraftKings where his price is pretty nominal at $5,900. That's a play I'm pretty excited about. I'm gonna go ahead and guess that Sarge will start next to Taj Gibson, with Taj manning the 5. And both of those guys make a lot of sense too. So it's difficult to. I don't think you need to be super cute, and I'm gonna have to start looking at how exactly I think the minutes are gonna work out here for a couple of these guys. But trying to project a full rotation, and it's getting a little sticky. On most things, I have a pretty good database of shit to look at and figure out what's going to happen, but as you alluded to, he's never missed a game before. So taking his minutes and making my best guesses at exactly how this is going to amortize is taking a second or two longer than I would like to, but I'm trying to really get a realistic minutes impression for Tolliver, who's not even necessarily guaranteed to play a lot of nights, and Luol. But since this is the sort of the news du jour, something we should certainly look at. Okay, so
make sure we didn't miss anything else. Go ahead.
So yeah, I don't think Tolliver is playable. There's simply a massive amount of cheap forward value. You can even throw Kyle Quinn into that conversation, and then there's just all these other guys from Cornette to again I alluded to power forward on FanDuel, which is now literally about the juiciest position ever. The elite power forward plays on FanDuel would be, and I'll just stick with the really elite. I'll go with Blake Griffin is truly elite. Domantas Sabonis is a truly elite play tonight. Sarge looks pretty good, although at least the price there has come up to $5,200. But again, it's hard to overstate the amount of extra usage floating around, and now you're playing against the Knicks. Sabonis already alluded to. Luke Cornett at $4,500 on a normal day would still be someone I'd have some interest in, but he's out of the game there. Though on DK at $3,500, that's a different conversation, especially with us confirming that he's still starting. And Avon Robb and Taj Gibson at $3,800 are both pretty sexy. So there's like 7 stellar power forward plays on FanDuel, making this a pretty difficult spot. I would rather play, if they were the same price, Saric over Taj. On FanDuel, I would probably rather play Taj for $1,400 less. On DK, you have Deng at 41. You have Taj at 38. You have Saric at 48. That's really close between those two. Saric gets the better matchup and is slightly more disposed to put up a lot of shots, which, it's more likely to me that Dario Saric takes a more of a leadership role in the offense at this point than Taj, whose game is a little bit more limited in that way. So combined with the upside, I'd probably there slightly now rather go to Saric, but the $1,000 differential between those two guys is about appropriate. But this some stellar news. But yeah, there's so much good 3K, 4K value. It's really tricky. So at this point, I would say that probably the overall strategic note I would look at this is, hopefully we have updated ownership coming shortly, is try to get away from the chalk value guys. So if we project, for example, on DK, Kent Bazemore to be the most chalky value guy at $4,200, I would definitely come in under that just because I believe in Saric, I believe in Taj, I believe in Kyle O'Quinn, who we'll talk about in a minute, I believe in Luke Cornett, I believe in a lot of these guys about as much, so I'll take the 9% owned one and not the 30% owned one.
Yeah, we are. We have gotten updates to Awesimo's rankings and Josh's projections right now on the site. If you are a premium member, go check that out. If you're not, again, that promo code live before lock. You mentioned Kyle O'Quinn, you mentioned Sabonis, but I guess let's dig a little more deeper into that real fast. Miles Turner's out. He's got some hip issues, so didn't recover over the break. How are we feeling here about your boy Kyle O'Quinn? You've been a fan of the cock for as long as I can recall, and now he's in the starting lineup. How are you feeling about his potential, and how many minutes do you think he gets?
Guilty as charged. I have him down right now for 21 minutes. I don't have a ton of confidence in that number, but I have him down right now for 21 minutes and about 26 fantasy points. It is a stellar matchup. It is not that different of a situation to Boban yesterday, where Boban was going to be chalky. Well, they're good to look at one versus the other. It's a much better matchup for Kyle O'Quinn, and Kyle O'Quinn more matchup dependent than Boban. So if you gave me Kyle O'Quinn starting against the Heat, I would be a lot less excited than Kyle O'Quinn getting the start against the Pelicans, is the first thing I would say. Kyle O'Quinn is actually the flat minimum everywhere, which is relevant. You're saving a little more money. But once they get the start, you start to irrigate the floor. It's for most of the day yesterday, and I talked about Boban some 63 times during the day until 40 minutes before lock, I would have rather faded Boban, because just looking at how little he'd played since coming to Philadelphia, he played 10 to 15 minutes in those 4 games, and the number of ways they could go at center, I would fade it because there was some 30, 40, 50% chance he still played minutes in the teens. And at that point, there was other value. I'd rather try to hit an upside somewhere else. Once they said he's starting, it's really hard for a decent fantasy producing guy to not get there. You would need some really weird 8 minutes, a half rotation for him not to be good. So I immediately pivoted to, even at 40-something% own we projected, liking him a lot. And it's a pretty similar situation here. I still like Sabonis. You can play him next to Sabonis, especially on DK. I have no issue with that whatsoever. You can play them next to each other on FanDuel, though again, they do negatively correlate pretty strictly. And with how amazing power forward and center are on FanDuel, certainly my first lineup wouldn't have them both. Can you play them both? Sure, you can stack that game. You can just play them both, and easily you can get 34 out of Kyle O'Quinn and 51 out of Domantas Sabonis. It's completely possible. But they're not priced as well on FanDuel, and because they negatively correlate and there's a billion other power forward and center plays I really like, my first lineup I don't think would have both of them in it, for what it's worth. I almost don't know where to go there. So, yes, I like Kyle O'Quinn. He's not a must by any means. It's difficult to guess where the ownership is going to be because of all this news. But I do think we fantasy gamers like to pretend not, but we love the cock. And just like Boban yesterday, he's sort of a bit more of a celebrity than Dario Saric and Taj Gibson in the fantasy realms. So the ownership will be a little bit unreasonably goosed because of that. So right now, I'll guess you have Kyle O'Quinn at I missed Boban yesterday by a percentage and a half. I said 42, and he was 40.6 in the main tournament there. I'll put Kyle Quinn right now on a 9-game slate as opposed to a 6-game slate, and with all that other value at 28%.
So, right, that's a little high right now, but this update has not. I think it takes a little while for the updates to fully reach their maximum efficacy. We got them at 16% right now with the update that came out about 10 minutes ago.
Okay,
I would wager that your guess is right.
I will go over that simply because he is the flat minimum, and he just lets you do other stuff. You're like,
Yes.
oh god, I can put him in there for it's just a natural impulse. Like I can play him over Cornette, and now I can play like just people go nutty over just 3,000, which is fine. That's a perfectly reasonable option. But so I don't know quite where to go from there.
Taj is so. We have an interesting question in the premium Slack right now, which I would like you to answer. But I'm just going to say I just plugged in Josh's minutes projections into my projections. Taj Gibson really does become a very compelling play.
Yeah,
3,800
I really
on
like.
DraftKings.
Yeah, I think Taj Gibson now. I've been looking at this for a bit. I have Taj Gibson at 33 minutes. So
yeah,
3,800 both sites. Taj Gibson makes an interesting Yvonne Robb pivot and a brilliant pivot in the event on FanDuel that you find out Robb is not playing. But I'm pretty big fan of Taj on FanDuel. I think he's just better than Saric, saving those $1,400. I have Saric projected right now for I think about 2 3/4 fantasy points more, but with a much higher chance of hitting a ceiling. But I do think Taj, especially if we don't get, is starting at center news before this comes out, which I can't guarantee is going to happen. I get those wrong once in a while, but I do think you will get Taj starting at the 5 in a pretty nice spot. Not the best matchup with DeAndre Jordan, but not one that overly concerns me. And he's just too cheap. So I do think you get 30-something minutes of Taj. I think Saunders will go that way. So, but I really like loading up on some Timberwolves at this point. And by loading up, I mean have a couple. And if you're playing a lineup, I would want to have 2 Timberwolves in it. Teague, Wiggins, Taj, Saric. Certainly the first 4 I'm looking at there, probably then Deng with no I. Again, don't play Gorgie Jang by mistake.
Don't play Gorgie Deng. He's out.
Hilarious,
for
by the way,
option.
that Gorgie Jang takes a personal day, and it's the first day in his entire career in 300 and whatever days. Towns is like, oh, me too. Really? Like, coach has to be like, could have timed out better there, but okay. Jang's got to be pissed too, because Gorgie Jang is one of those guys who, if he had different scenery, would be a very good, he could be, I don't know, Noah Vonleh when he was good in New York earlier this year. He's a guy who really could have benefited from a change of scenery. And now, so.
Would have been a nice stat padding day for old Gorgie Dang.
Right, exactly. You'd have gotten 30 minutes and 38 fantasy points out of Gorgie Jang here, and he's got to be like, really? I don't know what he's out personal for. Maybe it's a childbirth or something and he doesn't give a shit, but if it's like, my father's 3rd wedding or something, he's got to be like, oh.
He just wanted an extended all-star break. He's like, you guys don't need me. We're not doing anything here. But little did he know, Karl-Anthony Towns out. So speaking of that, Mr. T is asking the premium Slack, and this is going to put you on the spot right away, Eddie.
Mr. T is in the premium Slack?
Mr. T's, as in multiple T-shirts, not as in Mr. T.
Got it. So I was like, Mr. T
himself. Yeah, he's more of a DFS hockey guy than an NBA guy, surprisingly. So you were racist for thinking that. Mr. T's, though, is asking, can we rank the Pacers forwards, the Minnesota forwards, and the unit Cornette on DK? So obviously not every single forward in existence, but all these cheap guys who are now picking up some minutes. Sure. How would you rank the available value?
Deng, Saric. So we're talking about Deng, Saric, Deng, Saric, Taj, Kyle Quinn, Unit Cornette, and Sabonis. Like, I don't know if we're counting. You're saying forwards.
He's a forward center still on DK.
Yeah. I believe it or not, because of the all right, so these teams got together and played without Anthony Davis. You have half an Anthony Davis today, but they played without Anthony Davis on February 8th or 9th, and you got a very good game out of Sabonis off the bench there, and it is a pretty brilliant spot here. He and does Thad count, who's like $6,000? Like, I don't know where to draw this list here, but probably the player on DraftKings that I'm working the most to get into my lineup there. I'll just answer your question. I'm probably going to say Sabonis, Taj. Now I'm going to have to think a minute. It's probably Sabonis, Taj, Saric, Cornette would be my top 4 in order that I would be excited to play. I'm not surprised to get 50 out of Sabonis here. So probably, I'll put O'Quinn before Cornet. So I'll go Sabonis, Taj, Saric, O'Quinn, Cornet as my degree of excitement to get into a DK GPP lineup.
Yeah, it seems I'm not getting as much O'Quinn right now in crunches as I would have thought I would, which surprises me. But wonder. Interesting. Going to the premium Slack for some more questions, I guess, real fast. Thoughts on Beal versus DeMar DeRozan for a FanDuel GPP? We haven't talked about these guys yet. We talked about a lot of the big men. These are two pretty reasonably priced guys, one in a gigantic totaled game versus the Hornets. And DeMar DeRozan, of course, in another revenge game after the All-Star break to hopefully heal himself up. How are you feeling about both Beal and DeRozan, and who would you take in a FanDuel GPP?
I would probably save, I think it's 1,500 and play DeRozan. I think they're 94 and 79 respectively, and there's an even better price disparity or a larger price differential on DK where DeRozan is all the way down at 73. And on DK, I would rather play Kemba Walker also. I'll just throw that out there over Beal. I don't mind Beal at all. There is a ceiling for Beal. There's not going to be any tournament lineup you have with Beal in it that is going to be incorrect. But having Satoransky back there reduces the assist projection for me from like 9 and change to like 6. And that's enough that tilts it a little bit the other way for me. And at the reduced price, I think the DeRozan thing is real to some extent. I think going home is real to some extent. I do think that matters. Obviously, these two teams met the previous time this year in San Antonio. And DeRozan had 60 whatever fantasy points in that game, where he had 35 in the first quarter, if I recall. Like, that was the crazy one where I remember liking Kawhi a lot that day, and he just did nothing but the same thing I did, which was watch DeRozan have an insane game. So for all those reasons, this is one of the 5 spots where he already got a 60-point game out of DeRozan this year. I would rather save the money and play DeMar DeRozan, I think. I don't have any issue if you want to play Bradley Beal. I presume he will be lower owned than DeMar DeRozan, so I think you're going to have Beal at 8%, you're going to have DeRozan at 18 or something. Guessing those numbers right out of my ass, but Daddy likes.
Also, people saying so. Jaren Jackson, I think, officially out according to the premium Slack.
Jesus.
While we were talking.
Now it's a party.
Oh boy!
All right, so now you have Noah and Rob, who both look really, really good in this situation. So this is crazy. This is a great day to MME because you just rotate through these damn guys and try to get the right ones in there. Caboclo's starting. Hell, it's a party. So Caboclo is going to start at the 4. So they will start presumably Conley, Holiday, Avery Bradley, Caboclo, and Von Robb at the 5. I don't even oh god, the matchup's so good. Oh boy, this is an incredible spot. That's just a lot of really exciting value there. So yeah, all these guys project really not Caboclo. He does not project that nice. He can't shoot the basketball, which is a small problem when you play basketball. But Rob and Noah look really good now. I think I did the provisional on this before, and I had Rob at 35 minutes and Noah at 30. Those are really good against a team that absolutely sucks at guarding centers. So those guys are now in an excellent spot. Rob points per dollar is going to be a better play for me at this point. It is a brilliant spot for Von Robb. He is not out of play anymore on DraftKings at 5,600 and at 3,800 on FanDuel. I have no problem if you want to play Taj instead. I have no problem if you want a tournament pivot to Cornet. Both Sabonis and Blake are key spend-ups on that site. So just raw points per dollar. I have to stick with Rob at this point. And he will be higher owned than Taj. I feel safe in projecting. So that is the first pivot I would go to there. Yeah, that is some shit. This is I'm sorry I'm acting like I'm shocked, but this is literally the most cheap forward value I've ever seen.
That's a lot of time you're covering with that declaration.
Yeah, this is I've looked at roughly 99% of DFS slates in basketball over the last 5 years. Pretty intense. I can't ever remember having 9 cheap forwards I like, and there are 9 cheap forwards I really like.
And the
So
day after the All-Star break too. Like it feels like everybody should just be playing and happy.
yeah, well, car crashes. Like, what are you gonna do?
Sure.
Hard to complain. Feel bad for my boy again. But yeah, Joakim Noah is going to be well underowned relative to the rest of some of these guys, and I have him right now for 30 minutes and 33 fantasy points. Yeah, this is a brilliant spot for some of these guys. And you saw, for example, we talked about how good the matchup with New Orleans is. He played 30 minutes against New Orleans 3 games ago and had 40 fantasy points. So I don't think you get 30 minutes out of Kyle O'Quinn, but I think you get, again, I have 21-22, so yeah, I think you're getting 28, 29, 30 would be my projection for Kyle O'Quinn. I didn't actually redo the Pacers after the news came out. But that's a pretty brilliant spot, too. So I will handle some 50-50s. I'm just trying to explain all the nuances of the various players here. But Saric against the Knicks, I want to mention again, has a better upside than Taj. You can get 50 points out of Saric here. You're not going to get 50 points out of Taj Gibson. You can get 50 out of Teague. You can get 50 out of Wiggins. You're not going to get 50 out of Saric, and the ownership due to the price will be lower. And all these guys are going to be some of the best plays on the slate. So a couple corollaries of this on Yahoo and DK, you should be prioritizing these builds. Like if you have your utility spot right now as a shooting guard, if you have one lineup, you're probably building wrong. Not necessarily, but pretty likely at this juncture. So yeah, we have got some time to dig into this, but of these 9-10 cheap guys we're talking about, 5 of them are going to slaughter their prices, and it's worth also pointing out that it does change the relative value of Paul George and Russell Westbrook, making them better plays, because previously you were more inclined to play some of the centers. For example, you would play Towns, not in obviously, but you would play Jokic and Drummond and Blake, certainly, who I still think is a pretty strong play on FanDuel. But at this point, it's almost worth being able to play the better value at your big positions and play guys like, even in bad matchups, 11,800 for Westbrook or Paul George, because those end up being your better scoring days than playing slightly more specious value at the 1 or the 3 and running in slightly better point per dollar plays at center. It's kind of weird. It's a fairly complicated multivariable math equation, but it strikes me that at this point, it makes those guys better, and by extension makes some of these other guys worse. I also want to say that Vooch is going undersold. This is a pretty brilliant matchup for Vooch. This is the 4th meeting this year between the Magic and the Bulls, and Vooch has, I think it's 50, 53, and 60 fantasy points in the previous 3 get-togethers. I'm projected for 51.5. I do not have him much under the other elite center plays, and I expect the ownership to be lower than Jokic and Drummond. Again, this is site-dependent, obviously. But at the relative ownerships, I can certainly see getting there. And again, you get all sorts of very reasonable mid-priced plays here, too, where you play your best 2 of these value guys, hope they get there, and now you can play, DeRozan, and Kemba will call mid-priced for this example, where he's 9,300 on DK, and Wiggins, and Teague, and whatever the hell. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I'm very into Drummond today, but before, we could talk more about that because he's been on a monster tear, which I feel like people didn't. I talked about it in the Four Corners video I did today, but he's had like 8 out of 9 games over 50 fantasy points. Like I'm rounding up a little bit, but like just on a really crazy tear, which I feel like nobody now that kind of messes with everything. I would think maybe pivoting to just a couple like a Vucevic and a Drummond or even a Jokic. I think your lineup's going to be pretty different given all this value with the bigs, but that would be my first blush. But I think our ownership projections, Eddie, we're at the halfway point of the show, may reveal a little bit more about how you can go to differentiate your lineups. We did just get an update on both the ownership, the rankings from Osmo, and Josh's projections. So all of those are updated now. If you are a premium member, go check them out. But Eddie, number 1 on the list on DraftKings, Domantas Sabonis, projected for 43% ownership. How does Daddy feel about that?
43. It's close enough. Whatever answer I give is going to be a nominal distinction. I think I would come in under at this point, pursuant with my theory about spending up on guys like Westbrook and George and accruing more value. But DK, where he's multi-positional eligible, Kyle O'Quinn is also forward eligible for some reason. So that's worth pointing out for your constructions there. So is Luke Cornett. So obviously is Taj. So is Dario. But I will say under. But basically, yes, he's an incredible play. I'm really surprised if he doesn't pay off 5,500, and he's filling basically one of 4 power forward center spots there, so it's much more tolerable. FanDuel he'll be lower, and he's proportionally more expensive, and there's again 7 excellent power forwards of which you have to pick 2. He might be the one for me. I suspect if I built out FanDuel a billion times, my power forwards would most frequently be Blake Sabonis, Taj, and Rob. But probably Blake Sabonis and Rob at that point. But, yeah, anyhow, I will take a very, very nominal under on 43% DeMontis.
Yeah, I think I would go slightly over, but I'm probably going to be around 50. So I think that it's not far off either way. Number 2 on the list, Kent Bazemore at 36% projected ownership. How does Daddy feel about that one?
Hard pass. Like, I like Kent Bazemore a lot as a player, but the minutes are not certain. I have him for 27 right now. I'm not shocked if I see 23. There's still a number of guys who can come in behind him. And the matchup is not particularly brilliant for him. I was already a little soft on him with all the other value that existed. So I would come in well under 36%. It's a good spot, 4,200, that much time, Kent Bazemore, but it's not a particularly brilliant matchup. We just have other guys who project higher for less now. So I think that is well oversold. And again, see previous comments about getting the amazing forward value and paying up at those positions. So I would take out whatever expensive forward I have, put in a value guy, take out my Kent Bazemore, and put in Andrew Wiggins. So it strikes me right now as the best edge play on the slate.
All right, let's see this related to that thought you just had. Jeff Teague, number 3 on the list, 32% projected ownership. How does Daddy feel about that one?
Again, about appropriate. I would be somewhere in that neighborhood. Teague has looked good. Tyus back doesn't particularly bother me in this situation, and there will be some astride there. But I like it. 5,900. He's cheap. I would be inclined to play Wiggins instead of him if I could, because I expected the ownership to be distributed like that. So 30% is just great. I imagine Wiggins is at like 19 to 22 or somewhere in there off the top of my head, and at that number I would much rather get 50% off the ownership and play Wiggo.
Yeah, Wiggins is at 14% projected ownership right now.
Yeah, well, so it'll come in over that, but yeah, you're just looking at a situation where I've been fiddling with my I have a DK and FanDuel GPP lineup in front of me basically at all times, and I have both Wiggins and Teague in it right now, and I feel pretty good about it.
Speaking of that, before we go to number 4 on the list, question in the premium Slack. Do you have any interest in Derrick Rose on FanDuel? You mentioned the other Timberwolves, but not much for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I did not mention him because I have concerns with his health. It's the same thing with Steven Adams. Like he is in some way hindered by that ankle. I don't know exactly what the deal is there, but Rose has looked a little bit slower to me recently, so I'm a little more concerned. But yes, I have a ton of interest in him. There's nobody who is going to get minutes that you can want to play on the Timberwolves who isn't in play. Again, this position cannot be overstated, that they are playing a woefully bad defensive team in what should be a close game with a massive amount of missing usage in minutes. So, yes, of course, Derrick Rose is in play in a tournament. I think he is a great tournament play. It's just a weird situation. A subject that often doesn't get talked about in DFS is the relative number of good plays. And what I mean by that is on a large slate, the cash lines and GPP lines should be absurdly high today. There are just a number of players who should demolish their prices. And so for that reason, it is harder to advocate a play like Derrick Rose, who I like just fine. And in this situation on another day, I would be like, Derrick Rose, God damn it. There's just a lot of guys who are going to be chalkier, but just are a hell of a lot safer than a Derrick Rose, who I think is functioning at under 100% right now. So I have that reluctance and reticence towards that question. But he's very, very much in play. There's no one on the Timberwolves who's going to see any number of minutes who is not in play, and he's one of the guys we know will.
All right, let's go back to the ownership. Number 4 on the list, Darren Collison, 28% projected ownership on DraftKings. How are you feeling about that, Daddy?
I mean, I'm at this point, I have to prefer Teague pretty significantly. I like Darren Collison a lot. With Oladipo out there, he gets better. With Miles Turner out there, he gets better because he calls his own number more. I like him quite a bit. I like him distinctly less than Teague. So he is a great tournament pivot from Jeff Teague. The matchup with the Pellies is glorious. And a not 100% elf. There's all sorts of ways that works out very, very well for you. So I love Darren. This is sort of my point. Like when you play Derrick Rose, you're playing him over Jeff Teague and Darren Collison basically, and Andrew Wiggins and other guys who are similar. It depends by site, obviously, whether or not they're directly comparable. But those guys aren't that much cheaper than DeMar DeRozan. So that's why it's really tough to go to Derrick Rose because he doesn't need to beat one or two chalky guys in that position who project nicely. He has to beat four of them. And that's a little less likely. But, again, we have seen Derrick Rose throw up, the 50-point burger this year. So, certainly no reason he couldn't do it against the Knicks in this spot. So, like Derrick Rose, like Darren Collison, I suspect I would come in under that number now because of the enduring affection I have for Jeff Teague.
All right, and number 5 on the list to round this out, Blake Griffin. 25% projected ownership on DraftKings. How does Daddy feel about that one?
Yeah, I will come in under that as well. I prefer Drummond in this matchup. Apropos of not a hell of a lot, Drummond was much better the 2 previous times this year they faced the Hawks. But I do think in a matchup where Drummond can feast quite so much, it is less likely that Blake needs to put the team on his shoulders, and they've both been reasonably predictable quantities this year. There was a time earlier this year where I said today Blake, today Drummond, today Blake, and I got like 9 out of 10 in a row right, because they are reasonably easy to project based on the guys who are out there. So I would slightly rather play Drummond. Blake is a tremendous play. Blake is obviously a much better play on FanDuel, where I would have Drummond after Vooch and a couple other guys at center, and there's a lot of brilliant centers, and Blake is $1,700 less or whatever the hell it is on FanDuel. On DraftKings, I would come in under that number.
All right, let's see. Any other stuff you want to hit on before? Actually, here's a question from Raboshua, which I think is a helpful higher level question. With this much value, the scores and cash lines will be very high. It's a bit of an optical illusion with this many cheap guys, so where's the real edge? Only 20% of us are really going to enjoy this party.
That's the way it always is. Again, and I hope that's not the case. I hope 40% of you, speaking to the audience of the show, collectively enjoy the party. But yes.
You should put party in quotation marks, too. That was what he did.
Right, so where is the edge? The edge is on having more Taj and Sarge than the field, especially on DK, where it's a little more manageable to do so. I don't think they will be owned as significantly as they should be. The edge is on having Wiggins if he's going to be 14%, maybe even Wiggins and not Teague at that point. I don't know. I'm trying to think. Edge, comes in drips and drabs. It's very rare that it's like, oh, here's the edge. Sometimes there's like, this guy should be 30% owned, he's going to be 6% owned. Here's your edge for tonight. And the closest guy that jumps out to me right now as that guy would be Andrew Wiggins. But, there are lots of other spots we can sort of talk about here. I don't think now 1% owned Alex Len is out of play here. You need foul trouble for it to go crazy, but if it goes crazy, they will give him all the time they can throw at him. The first 2 times the Pistons and the Hawks got together this year, Alex Len and Dwayne Dedmon started both of those games. They went Twin Towers-y, both times. And one time Alex Len was dog shit and had some single-digit fantasy point number, and the other time he went crazy and had 45 fantasy points. If I'm building 150 lineups, I have 4 Alex Len in it. Just came to mind, figured I'd throw that out there. But yeah, and there's another small edge in understanding like your ideal FanDuel construction now involves previously difficult to justify the spend ups on Paul George and Russell Westbrook because you're looking at value guys at 4K who can get you 35, and it just makes more sense than playing a slightly more optimally priced Blake Griffin maybe. But I still like Blake. That's tough. It comes in drips and drabs.
Got a question from Don't Embiid My Status. Who would be your favorite small forwards on FanDuel for a GPP? Obviously, we know all this big value now, so where are you going on the wing?
I imagine my first GPP lineup on FanDuel, and the one I'm staring at right now, has Paul George and Kawhi Leonard in it. Because, again, there's just tons of guys who cost 4K who I think score a ton of money, and I want to spend money, and I may as well spend money on the small forwards. Kawhi is notoriously not a super upside guy. but there's a real chance that you're just that's FanDuel is a very different animal from DK. Kawhi Leonard is a very good play on FanDuel and nearly out of play on DK in what is not the best matchup with so many other guys who project well, because there really aren't any positions on DK, or tonight there are. You can't play 8 forwards, but most nights there just aren't any. So, on FanDuel, Kawhi could very possibly be in the best possible lineup, scoring 46 fantasy points, and I'm not even kidding. Just because of the positional rarity issues there, and small forward being a bit of a dumpster fire there. If you go past George and Kawhi, you get Gallinari at 7K, who I still like, but is only taking 10-12 shots, even in the absence of Tobias Harris. And the matchup in Memphis certainly isn't something we're super excited about. Trevor Ariza, who I kind of like on DraftKings at 5,900. Especially if you expurgate from your sample size the particularly tough matchups, which this is really not. Although Charlotte has slowed down significantly, but they haven't super improved. He is just coming over, really been involved in the offense. I want to specifically look at this. Now, again, at this point, he's a forward who costs 6K. I very seriously doubt he gets a spot, but took 11 shots in a difficult matchup with Toronto, 14 against Detroit, 12 against Chicago, 6 in the tough matchup with Milwaukee, 19 against Atlanta. Doesn't get he's just been pretty productive and shooting the ball, and I like the matchup with Charlotte. So he would have had some interest for me, but not really anymore, even on DK. And on FanDuel at 68, no. Otto Porter at 67 against a really underrated Orlando defense right now. John Isaac 65. I don't really want to do that. Bojan 61 is fine. The matchup is great, but it's not making my socks roll up and down. And they're starting to price away the upside. Kenny Hustle at 6,000. Rudy Gay at 6,000. None of this jumps off the board, and a lot of these guys are going to end up at 30, 35 or whatever. So if you get 48 out of Kawhi and 61 out of Paul George, that's very possibly in the best possible lineup, because you have whatever Bazemore above and Rob or O'Quinn or Taj or whomever the hell at the bottom, and you can just do some real beatings that way. So that's how I think that gets viewed by me. I'm still tinkering with this as we look at it, but yeah, it's one hell of an interesting situation.
One more game theory question from Rin Pack. Better to go up to Vucevic or Jokic on FanDuel, or would you go down to Kyle O'Quinn or Noah?
At this point, I would probably be more inclined to go down. I would probably rather go with one of the expensive center plays than go with Blake. I go back and forth on it, but that's my inclination. So I'm fine with both of them, but I'll say I'm slightly more inclined to run O'Quinn or Noah, who you mentioned. I think that makes a fair bit of sense there.
All right, let's see what other questions we have. Thoughts on Mike Conley today? Not a guy being talked about a bunch. He was sick before the All-Star break, but also giving a little bit of usage up to Avery Bradley at the same time. What are we thinking about Mike Conley today in a pace-up spot versus the Clippers?
Yeah, I don't know if that Mike Conley giving up usage thing sticks. But
he was sick. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, I do think the minutes continue to slowly get pulled off him, a la Drew Holiday, not stated as clearly as such. I think Mike Conley is obviously fine in a tournament. Had one very big game against the Clips in their 2 previous runouts this year. It's really tough to find anyone on that Clippers team, by the way, to segue briefly, who you're particularly excited about. The matchup isn't great, and the usage is getting pretty normalized all around.
Lou Will. 48 fantasy points in 22 minutes that last game?
Yeah, it's and again in multiple lineups, I love having some Lou Will. It's just in single lineups, it's hard to do that over DeRozan.
Oh yes, yeah, that's
Kemba
fair.
Or Lamb is another guy who at his current prices, I think makes a fair degree of sense getting there, or even Bazemore, who's going to be popular. And there's no reason you shouldn't play Kent Bazemore or Luke Kennard, by the way, who it looks like finally they're doing what I've been asking him to do for about 3 months, which is he's got the most potential of all the 7 wing guys you're running out on your team, and we've managed to get rid of Stanley, but I would much rather play Luke Kennard than Wayne Ellington. I do not understand ranking those guys somewhat close to each other. I have Kennard for 8 more minutes and 5 more fantasy points, so obviously the matchup is pristine, so of course this is a spot where you can run Ellington out there, but you're looking at better steal and block potential out of I would prefer to run Luke Kennard there.
Yeah, I think it was better when Kennard looked like he was going to be a chalk play, but now with all that value out there, that's out of the equation. But,
yeah, I would not think that is going to be the case anymore.
Thoughts on the Spurs tonight? We talked a little bit about DeRozan, but how do you feel about the team overall?
I think the backcourt's a bit of a mess now. Derek White's going to be back. He's going to play limited minutes, so that really makes it hard for me to do, Mills, Forbes, White himself, obviously. That entire situation is a bit murky. So DeRozan, pretty clear number one for me. Number two would be Rudy Gay at 6,000 and 5,400. He's just been underrated all year. He's looked really good, especially when he's healthy, and I expect him to be 100% healthy now. Matchup isn't brilliant. The first time they played the Raptors, he had I want to say 28, 29 fantasy points in 25 minutes. He had foul trouble in that game. I think he ended with 5 personal fouls. But Rudy Gay would be my second guy too there. But again, we have lots of cheap forwards in ideal matchups. Now you're talking about, against Toronto on the road. That I think is a little more sketchy. So DeRozan I legit like. I do think the upside is there. Gay would be the next guy I would go to, but not a ton of interest in that Spurs team.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think DeRozan you got to throw a few darts at because what he did last time was just too crazy to fully avoid.
Yeah.
But
and again, he doesn't need to do that. He's 7,300 on DK.
Sure.
I don't need 63 again. If you get you 42, you're certainly not crying in your Cheerios. So.
For FanDuel cash, would you go Teague, Beal, and Parsons as the punt, or Conley, DeMar DeRozan, and Deng as a semi-punt?
I would go with the second one.
All right. Before we get too deep into the either ors, is there any other items here? It's obviously a very big slate. I don't know if we touched on everything as the value here that was popping up in the news that broke was so important, but any items in your notes that you want to touch on before we go to these questions?
That's a fair question. Let me poke through what I have for today and see. Not a lot of love for anyone on the Bulls. I do think, Robin Lopez is a good value play, and by that I mean he's my 17th best value play but I have him for 31 minutes, so he's $4,000 on DK. I would have a couple shares of Robin Lopez in there. Has had a couple decent games against Vooch in the past, but certainly not someone I'd super be prioritizing. Not a lot else from that game to discuss. Yeah, for the Hornets, when this is actually the second meeting of the year between the Hornets and the Wizards, so they have 2 more coming up. When they met for the first time was in December, and we did have Cody Zeller in there, and you got 60 something out of Kemba, and it is a pretty juicy spot for him. That was a game where all the Wizards were good. Satoransky had, I think, 35 fantasy points and was the worst scoring Wizard in that game of the 5 starters. Yep. Everyone else had 40 to 45 to 50 or something. But this is a Charlotte team that has slowed down a lot and isn't quite that exciting. That being said, those guys make some sense in tournaments. I probably have, Ariza then Beal. But you can do, Jabari Parker in a tournament. The upside is there, and the ownership's going to be pretty gone. You can do Bobby Portis. No strong take on who particularly to look at there. Don't completely sleep on Thad Young in a pretty great spot. I would want some tournament exposure to the Deuce there. Knicks, fuck that team. But, Mitch, again, my 17th best big value play, but just carries a huge upside with him. And, Mitchie the Kid would still have some interest in there. I don't know what they're going to do with the whole thing. Moutier is going to be back. They're saying they're going to play him some at the 2, so now that's imperiling, Dotson minutes, whatever Trier might have got. Just, I don't really want to talk about that anymore.
One quick item. Apparently, Miles Bridges is starting for the Hornets. He's bumping. Who's he bumping out? Oh, bumping Jeremy Lamb out of the starting lineup. Oh, that's not good. Maybe
are we sure about that? That would shock me, based on comments that I heard at the break.
Schmanessy Schmabs just put it out there, so.
Okay, that's.
Yeah. Hey, welcome to the post-All-Star break world, guys. It's going to get even weirder when tanking kicks in.
That's really strange. Luka's out.
Oh, well, how does that affect the Mavericks, Eddie? Pretty much everything?
Tim Hardaway Jr. becomes pretty interesting in tournaments now, especially DK, where he's 5,000 something. FanDuel at those prices, I'm going to still try to prioritize Wiggins and DeRozan and a couple other guys. But the big guy you want to look at there is um, Tim Hardaway Jr. Now, not a great matchup there. And it actually imperils the whole matchup a fair bit because I'm not surprised to see Denver run away with this at this point now. But Tim Hardaway Jr. would have a fair amount of interest for me as a guy who could just put up a metric butt ton of shots. Past that, I'm not going to play Jalen Brunson. Dorian Finney-Smith gains some appeal. He should pick up, into the mid-30s in minutes. Okay, so yeah, they are apparently Lamb will not start. So that's fascinating for that team. So
Does that
at
make Lamb
this point, I
unplayable
like Kemba even more for what it is worth, and hopefully you can Lamb to Wiggins or something. I think site dependent, obviously. But
So does that make Lamb unplayable to you?
yes, with everything we know and everything else that's going on in the slate and all the goodies, yes. At that point, I'm gonna try to avoid Lamb. I think.
All right. Let's see what other.
I don't
questions
hate Jamal Murray. Someone else I want to mention. The minutes are down, and that is a relevant concern there. I think for a lot of the rest of the year, he is going to see. I think he saw 31 minutes in the last game before break, and they have basically their whole team healthy at this point. So there are a lot of guards and wings on this team now. I think his position is the most secure of the guys we're talking about here. But that being said, there's still going to be some squish there. So a little bit of concern trying to do that. Yeah. I guess that's about it looking at there. But Jamal Murray plays 30, 32 minutes. This matchup is pretty great. So in tournaments, I can see having some exposure to Jamal.
So there's no great either ors, and I think for the people out there, it might be more valuable if you just go through the value. Like, what's the value you're comfortable with right now? Because we've had a ton of news fluctuating in throughout the hour. So I think even stuff we talked about 20 minutes ago might not be valid. I guess just take people as fast as you can. I guess take people through what you feel comfortable with as value so far on the slate.
Someone says favorite value punt on FanDuel. That probably has to be Von Robb for me. The ownership won't be as high as it should be. But he's going to start at center in one of the top 3 I'm starting at center matchups you can possibly have. I have him in the mid-30s in minutes. And I have to project him for near 40 fantasy points, which is kind of crazy for $3,800. So the power forwards with Rob, Gibson. So when you're saying, who do you want to punt on FanDuel? We'll call those your punts, sure. But, you can punt the 2 power forward spots with any number of strong plays. And there's other guys behind them. But I'd probably have Rob and Gibson as my first 2 favorite in tournaments. Yeah, I would be my answer there. As far as the other value goes, it ends up being site dependent. So we sort of have to tackle it in that context. Plus or minus 50% on Cock or Sabonis, GPP on DK, or a pivot for either. There's not a great Cock pivot. Not to be confused with cock push-ups, which you can only ever do one. But
I often confuse those.
You can only do one. Some people don't know that. But Sabonis, there's 117 good pivots. So I'd be really surprised if neither the Cock nor Sabonis were good. So if you're building one lineup and have neither of those guys, you're probably building wrong. And on DK again at their prices, I don't really care if you have them both. 3,000 is 3,000. I would be more inclined to turn Kyle O'Quinn into someone in that 3x range that's really good, be it Cornette or Taj or whomever. But certainly not a requirement to do so. And I couldn't quite understand your question with plus or minus 50%. If you have half of your lineups with Kyle O'Quinn in them and half of your lineups with Domantas Sabonis in them, I'm okay with that. That's reasonable. You're over the field, but I think I want to be over the field, and I would expect one of those guys to end up being really good. It would be strange for me if they weren't. There's a couple situations like that yesterday where it was like, one of these guys really has to be good in this spot. It is very difficult to play this game out without one of them being exceptional. So that's a pretty similar situation. It doesn't have to happen. You could have Collison and Thad do the nutty and get 21 out of Kyle O'Quinn and 31 out of Sabonis, and they're both meh. The greater likelihood is one of them does some real damage.
All right. Let's see what else we have here in the Slack. 6,200 left for utility on a DK GPP. Where would you go?
6,200 utility. I'll assume you already have Sabonis. If not, leaving $700 is towards the top end of what I think is a good idea on a large slate on DK, but not an unreasonable contest. Not doing Ibaka with his limited minutes. Don't really like Porter. I don't mind if you want a Bobby Portis. That's fine. I don't want a Lamb at this point, which may be why you're asking the question. Probably Thad Young. If you don't have Sabonis, almost certainly Thad Young. If you already have Sabonis, next choice for me would be Ariza, and then Rubio. But Collison, Rose, there's a lot of nice guys in there. So it's a difficult question for me to answer without seeing the rest of your lineup. But any of those names that I said, profile just lovely.
Would you go Rab or Noah?
I project Rob for a little bit more. I like Noah a lot. At his price, he also projects really nicely. But and I assume, well, I don't know where this question is being asked. This DK, one is 1,600 more than the other, and FanDuel, they're different fucking positions. So Yahoo, I don't know where this question is directed at, but I have Rob for 5 or 6 more minutes and 7 or 8 more fantasy points. With
also, Wayne Ellington and Bruce Brown starting. Does that change anything at all for you, those guys?
Really? Kennard is not starting again? No, it doesn't change a damn thing. At this point, it's just a mess, and there's no reason to do it. You have 0 or 1 of those guys be good. Brown sometimes starts and gets 12 minutes. Ellington... If I had to play a value wing on that team now, it would now be Ellington. So, joy cometh in the morning.
All right, and it looks like we're locked now, so I think we got everything. So now it's time for America's favorite game. What a day for America's favorite game.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. What a fucking weird slate this was. Really, one of those slates where it's not helpful to be doing a show.
No, I presume you were having a good old time.
No, that was just curveball after curveball. My 5 Jeremy Lambs will just be waiting, and hopefully off the bench he gets more usage. That's all we can hope now for us Lamophiles.
Yeah, we covered a lot. Hopefully we did a decent job of looking at everything there. So yeah, let's look at some ownership on the various sites. I know it's locked, but please tell me I'm not wrong for playing Trey Burke on FanDuel. You're not wrong for playing Trey Burke on FanDuel. That's fine. Not a great matchup for him. Not sure how much time he gets out here, but you know, with Luka gone, it's cute. I can get behind that. So no, I think he's just fine on FanDuel. DK, you're probably asking for some trouble, but wouldn't even be out of play there at 1% ownership. So I think that's cute. All right, the 400K Friday shoot around on DraftKings.
Because it's $12, you see, and 12 men are shooting around. Way to go, DraftKings.
I mean, don't get me wrong.
Better than a throwback jam, I guess.
I'm a big fan of numerology there.
The one I heard you and Josh talking about the throwback jam on FanDuel yesterday, and it made me laugh because that's an example of thinking way too hard about your tournament names and trying to get clever. Don't need to go that far where you're doing Tommy Two-Tone numbers with the entries and the amount.
I forgot about that.
It's fucking. That actually infuriated me to hear you guys talk about it. I was like, what? Like, that's so. You don't need to be that extra.
I was like, really? We're going. And don't get me wrong, I'm an old ass man. So, 80s pop references, I like more than most people, I have a feeling. Considering half of your audience was not born, or more than, when that song was released. Maybe, 8675309 Tommy Tunon is 1982, give or take a year. So, it's before my time. I was 5. So, anyway. Most owned player, Domantas Sabonis, 48%. Yeah, no, that number got up there. I would be under that, definitely. We were talking low 40s, so.
That was what we thought. That was close. I think that's a fair number.
DeRozan, 30.
People, that feels a little point chasey, even though the price is fine. But
yeah, the price is really good, but it does. I would want under 30. 30 is a pretty big number there. Thoughts on Devin Harris? I imagine he will play 18 to 21 minutes. Can be a really useful guy, but in the world of all the good guard value, he's not out of play if you're playing 150 lineups. But against Denver, I'd have to really, really want it to get there. Kyle O'Quinn, 21 and a quarter.
All right.
Yep. That's what did we have him? We had a conversation where he was at something, and
We
I
had
said
him initially at 16, then he went up to I think to about 21. Yeah, he went up to 21, so nailed that one though.
Go look at these ownership projections. How good is that? We update like 3 times to go to 16 to 20 when it lands at 21.26. That's brilliant.
Yeah,
When you said 16, I said I think it'll be. I overshot it. I said 26 or 28. I had him in the higher 20. So yet again, the projection's better than me. Next, Kemba Walker, 18.97. Yeah, the $9,300 price tag on DK is really nice. And putting Bridges in there and taking Lamb out actually helps him a little more. Makes Batum closer to playable too. Darren Collison, 16.7. That feels fine. Bojan, 12. I'd want a little less than that on DK, but certainly nothing wrong with it. Beal, 12. That's fine. Cody Zeller, 11.3 is an enduring mystery to me. With all the good forwards and bigs today, I don't know how 11.3%. Like, Washington suck, rebounding, etc. I still have him projected for like 27 fantasy points at no longer that cheap of a price. I can't do that. I'm paying up for Rob or someone there.
I don't hate the logic because I think you're saying like, hey, all these cash or all these like popular guys are going to suck. So who's a guy who's going to give me like 25 to 30? And I think in that perspective, I don't mind it. But I think you're really saying all these other centers are going to be.
They won't suck.
Yeah.
They won't all suck.
I agree.
Like when you run him, you're saying that of these 9 really good value power forward centers, at least 8 of them are going to be bad, and this is not going to happen. Or at least I'd be shocked if that was the case. Kawhi 10%, Randall 10%. Much more interested in Randall there. I think he sticks with his 27-minute role or something. So I know a lot of people were super into him. I'm a little less excited in a bad matchup, but certainly less Drew, less Anthony Davis, some usage to float around there too. But again, with the Towns news, would rather go for the larger chunks of usage missing for Minnesota against the Knicks than go for a little less usage floating against the Pistons.
I like Randall. Randall looked really good in that last game. He got 39 minutes. His usage rate was up. Like I think he's a guy who's going to show big. I think he can opt out in the summer too. So
yeah, it'll be interesting. Maybe they let him run out there. I still had him for I think 28, but yeah, there's a chance. There's just guys around. I don't know if we see more. I don't know how testy they get with Randall and Okafor and Diallo and all the guys they can run out at the bigs there. So it'll be interesting to see. But 10%, I like that. Aaron Gordon 9.4%. That's just fine, especially against the Bulls. Kyle Lowry 8%. Again with Kawhi, and Kyle Lowry has had few and far between great games, and the matchup isn't that great. But home $7,200. That made some sense. Jabari Parker 7.2. Okay. Zach LaVine 6.7. Again, the matchup with Orlando is really more difficult than I think a lot of people get offhand.
Yeah, that defense is they're blowing everybody out before the All-Star break. I think they've won their last 6 or 6 out of their last 7. They've been really good, but the Bulls have also been better.
They've won many by blowout too. Like they've been
they've been
people.
Putting the boots, it seems.
Testy, you like that? Trevor Ariza 6.4 again. Yeah, I like that a little bit. Batum 6.4. Would probably prefer doing the Batum route at this point. With his being more involved in the offense, a little more usage recently, and Lamb moving to presumably the bench. I don't think he's straight out, but he could be straight out. Otto Porter 6.3, Rudy Gay 5.8, again, that's fine. Portis 5.4, that's fine. Jeremy Lamb holding solid at 5%, half of which is you, apparently.
Us lamb chops are the most ride or die for Jeremy in all situations.
Marvin Williams, 4.73. I would rather have done that than Zeller. It's another reason it's just a little odd for me. Just adding some more. I'm going to get some three-pointers, etc. upside. Pascal Siakam, 4.7. I mean, my boy is good. Like, we're kind of massacring my boy.
I was happy for Pascal getting that All-Star snub game before the break. I enjoyed that.
He's, in there, like, he could have been an all-star. He could be most improved. He could be. He's
the best basketball without borders player that system has turned out yet. And if they keep doing that, it's going to be a fun league in like 10 years.
Yes, it is. Lauri Markkanen 4%. You gotta like him at 4%. But the next one I like even more. Thad Young at 3.8. I would prefer that and save myself $2,000. Evan Fournier at 3. Sure. Bulls. Jeff Green 3. Sure. Jeremy Lin 2.8. Okay. Not the best spot. Satoransky 2.75. Sure. Ross 2.5. Isaac 2.4. Ibaka 2.2. Aldridge 2 flat. Kenny Hustle 2. Robin Lopez 2. Drew Holiday 1.7. interesting. Fewer minutes, bad matchup, paying full price does not seem like excellent shopping. But, I mean, it's 2% Drew Holiday, I guess. Anthony Davis, 1.4. I mean, the price is getting to the level where he doesn't have to embarrass you. If he plays 25 minutes, dude can get 55. Like, he has that in the tank. Like, he's had 100 in a game before in 40 minutes. So he can do 2.5 fantasy points a minute. We've seen it over a longer period of time than this. So, okay. Again, with all the best value bigs in the universe, this seems like not the right day to do it in a terrible matchup, but there's going to be a point at which he's going to make sense to purchase going forward. Danny Green, 1.3. Alfred Payton, 1.3. DJ Augustine, 1.2. Marc Gasol, backup center, 1.2. Thomas Bryant, 1.1. Patty Mills, 1.1. Kojo, 1 flat. Miles Bridges, 1%. Feels pretty good, 1% against the Wizards starting. Wesley Matthews, 0.9. Okay. Etwan Moore, 0.77. Is he playing?
I think he's playing, but probably not playing a ton.
For some reason, I thought I'm a little shaky on Etwan's status, which is odd. I thought I knew everyone, but offhand, for some reason, I feel like I'm missing Etwan news. Davis Bertans, 0.65. Minutes a little imperiled, but my boy can shoot. Marco Bellinelli, 0.46. Isaiah Briscoe, 0.45. Jaleel Okafor, 0.4. Chris Dunn, 0.4. Malik Monk, 0.4. Don't mind that. Check Diallo, 0.3. I think that's cute. Tyreek Evans, 0.29. Congratulations, you played yourself? Right? Why do I think Reek is Reek in?
I believe he got ruled in when Turner was ruled out.
Okay, I got that one twisted. We continue. Bryn Forbes. It wasn't a real day. I was considering Tyreek, so I didn't keep up with that bit of news. 0.26 Bryn Forbes. 0.21 Wes Iwundu. 0.20 Derek White. 0.19 Kem Birch. 0.16 Norm Powell. 0.15 Michael Kidd Gilchrist. 0.15 OG Anunoby. Ryan Archie Diacono. 0.14 Sam Decker. 0.10 Wayne Selden. 0.09 Aaron Holiday. 0.8 Tony Parker. 0.7 Wait a minute. Tony Parker?
Really? No Miles Turner in there or anything? Jesus.
We're coming up. Tony Parker, is he back in?
Yeah, he's in.
God damn it. Jakob Poeltl, 0.07. Tim Frazier, 0.07. Devontae Graham, 0.07. Doug McDermott, never the answer, 0.06. Shelvin Mack, 0.06. Miles Turner, 0.05.
There we go.
1/20th of 1%. Congratulations. You have played yourself.
Yeah, Tyreek is available to play, so
Okay,
that I did confirm that.
That does not meet my stringent.
There was enough news filling our brain until we were bleeding out of our ears that I think it's okay to miss Tyreek Evans
not
available.
Something I ever super worry about. But,
no, we'll persevere. Let me just make sure there's no
starting. Jesus Christ. Like, they have all these interchangeable wing guys, many of whom, like, Kennard actually has some sort of ceiling. Maybe start him and show him some damn minutes. Maybe he'll play 30 off the bench and be very good again.
I like Ellington, but I like Ellington for a playoff team. I don't know why Ellington is on the Pistons right
Ellington's a fine piece. No, exactly. It's Taj Gibson. Taj Gibson's a great basketball player. He's a very good guy to have on your team. There's a whole veteran presence thing. But I guess Bruce Brown, at least, when they throw him back in there, he's young with some potential. He's 19. Let's see what happens there.
Let me just make sure that we missed any questions. From Rinpack, Bazemore or Delon Wright? I think that's still applicable.
Yeah, that's interesting. I generally like Delon right here. I think he does continue to get pretty large chunks of time off the bench there. So I probably would play Delon Wright in one matchup over Kent Bazemore in a tournament. Bazemore I have projected for more, but Delon Wright at $500 less on DK and I presume 4 or 5% as opposed to 30, depending on whether or not you're looking at main or late slate. Yeah, I probably would rather Delon Wright, again, if I'm trying to find a pivot.
And one last question, because I think this one was still applicable from Sir Legend in the premium Slack. Who do you like if you have Saric, Wiggins, Teague, and Rob for 5,100 at utility on DK? He's leaning Hardaway Jr.
I'm very fine with Hardaway Jr. There's an upside there, and he will be relatively low on. So let's see if I have access to anything.
Derek Favors he mentions too. He looks fine.
Say again?
Derek Favors he also mentioned as a potential guy. I think he actually projected pretty well for me. Not one of my favorite plays with all the bigs we have, but I think he's fine too.
At the moment, with our not yet started options, I would play Dario Saric, and then after that, I would probably go to Tim Hardaway Jr.
Actually, I think he might have. Yeah, he already had Saric in his lineup, so so Hardaway Jr.
That's it. So I will slightly go Hardaway Jr. over Millsap and the other options we talked about.
Ooh,
So
yeah.
I'll probably go with Tim at that point. You got Millsap at 46.
You think Millsap keeps it going tonight? He's had 2 big games since coming back from injury.
I mean, it's 46. The matchup's pretty good at this point. I have, blowout concern at this point, and the team is starting to get really healthy, but Trey Lyles isn't there. So for all those reasons, yeah, I think Millsap is still a perfectly equitable play at that number.
Yeah, I'm wondering if I don't have enough of him. That's why I asked. But he's an interesting play. I thought it looks like a different player since coming back from injury, but I feel like we've said that before with Paul Millsap. So let's see if that holds up. All right. I think we got everything we needed to. Anything else you want to hit on, Eddie, before we do the closing spiel?
No. Good day yesterday, everyone. Thanks. Woke up to some kind words and some screenshots and stuff, and talked about Middleton a lot, who was very low owned, and he had a really good game. And I spent quite a bit of time talking about Al Horford and how consistently good he's been against the Bucks. So that was gratifying. It's good. Although he wasn't not that low owned on DK because he was also wicked underpriced, but. Good day yesterday. Hopefully keep it rolling again today. And another big slate tomorrow, and then poop on Sunday, I think. I think it's a big slate tomorrow and nothing on Sunday. So maybe I'll be off Sunday. Certainly possible.
Ooh. All right, but you'll be on tomorrow. Are you solo tomorrow?
I presume.
All right, so presumably solo Eddie tomorrow, so check that out if you are playing this weekend.
Maybe
of course,
EMAC has been second chairing me for big weekend slates, so maybe I get out there with another OG.
There you go. Yeah, EMAC and you go back a long way. Have some fun photoshops of yourself on Twitter that I saw as an 80s rock band of some sort. So yeah, check out old Eddie and EMAC tomorrow. And yeah, I'm trying to think what else. Oh, promo code Live Before Lock, of course. If you're already hating your lineup, play some night slates. Use our ownership projections. We do have ownership projections for the night slate, which are really strong. And honestly, our COO Tom is one of the better night slate players I think I've seen out there. And he's the one who's personally handling that every day. So use that promo code Live Before Lock for 50% off your first month at Osmo. Play some night slates if you are going to end up tilted off of this early slate already. And yeah, Eddie will be here tomorrow. I'll be back on Tuesday, but see you guys again soon. Wish you the best of luck. Have a good weekend.